Hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every week, as you know, meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And this is a subject we've been wanting to get to for quite some time.
Yes, we have indeed. We've talked about it from time to time, and that is the topic of women in politics. Why are there so few? We've got a couple of ladies going to be here today, a mother-daughter team, going to tell us about actions they are taking to try to correct this perceived deficiency in numbers. And they've got some really interesting stats and some really interesting ideas about what to do.
Women in politics, today's topic on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
I grew up in a tough neighborhood. There was a lot of drugs and a lot of violence. Really, for me to get away was to focus on artwork. It was a way for me to really cleanse myself so I can deal with all the problems that was going on in school and at home. It kept me from crossing that line.
Our goal is to make sure that the arts are available to all, that our community is awakened by the arts, that our community is touched by the arts.
It's not an organization that's focused on one thing. They're focused on the arts across the board.
Chesapeake knows that in order to have a full and complete community, we have to have a strong arts component.
Now you have people that understand how important that is, and they're really getting involved. It really changes lives, and it changes families. You know, eventually it's going to change generations.
If you need big accounting firm expertise but aren't happy with the value or level of partner engagement from your current national firm, contact Hogan Taylor. Hogan Taylor provides national-level public accounting expertise with high-touch, local partner service in all areas of tax, audit, business valuation, and litigation support. Contact us at hogantaylor.com/The Verdict. Hogan Taylor, big enough to know, small enough to care.
We're back on The Verdict, and Kent's going to introduce our guest.
Really pleased today to have two guests, a mother-daughter combination, going to talk to us about an organization called Women Count. On my right is Kathy Taylor. Kathy was a former mayor of Tulsa, was formerly the Secretary of State for the state of Oklahoma. She is now a practicing lawyer with McAfee and Taft, involved in many community and civic activities, and has driven the turnpike to be with us today to talk about this organization called Women Count. Kathy, glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
Glad to see you again.
Glad to be back.
We're glad to have you back. On my left is Kathy's daughter, but she has attributes all her own beyond that. Not that that isn't enough, mind you. But she is the executive director of the Lobeck Taylor Family Foundation. She did her undergraduate and law work at the University of Oklahoma. She's involved in many community and civic activities in the Tulsa area. She was named recently as one of the top 40 persons in Tulsa under the age of 40 by the Tulsa Business Journal. She is also involved in Women Count with her mother, involved in getting the organization started and activities going. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you both on the show. Women Count. Tell us about the idea and where it began.
Well, we are both interested in seeing women's voices in the political process, and we had a discussion one day that we would reach out and see if other women had that concern, particularly with what was happening in public education funding in the last legislative session. And we reached out to 25 women to come over for lunch. 50 women showed up, and about 6 weeks later we had 10 candidates and almost 300 women of all political parties show up in kind of a speed dating session to meet those candidates and learn about why they were running for office.
And is this a Republican thing, a Democratic thing?
It's a nonpartisan. It's really about issues that matter to women in Oklahoma and families.
Mm-hmm. And what were they interested in? Is it all levels of politics or school
state
board?
Legislative. We really, at this time, we really were looking at state legislative races. Only, Elizabeth, 12% of the women in
That's
our
right.
People in our state legislature are involved, are women.
Right, and so what we really wanted to do through this was inspire women to run for office and then show them that they had tons of support from other individual women on their race, and then hopefully they'll all win their elected office, and we will inform the women that donated to them about how they can stay involved and how they can continue to show up to show the women who are elected that they have support at the Capitol.
Well, Kathy, you've been a prime example of someone carrying the banner with women in politics. You have been mayor of Tulsa and also on a statewide level been Secretary of State. How's your experience going to help you in persuading others to become involved?
Well, I think we had one of our state legislators recently say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I really saw that women's voices at the state capitol and the mayor's office did change the dialogue. It was a more robust dialogue. And as we've said, half of the people in our state are women. Only 12% are represented, of women are represented in the legislature. And men and women do approach problem solving differently, not better or worse, but in different ways. And we felt like that it's important to encourage women to have that voice heard. And I saw what an impact it made, particularly when I served as Mayor Cornett has as mayor.
At the state level, when you were going around the state, you obviously had the opportunity to meet a lot of potential candidates and leaders in communities. Oklahoma's not short on leadership.
No, and when women run, they win as often as men.
Really?
But
but they run less.
Women do not put their name on the ballot as often. They say that it takes a woman 5 or 6 times to be asked to even view herself as a candidate, and men don't have that same issue. So we really want to see Elizabeth's generation, or I want to see Elizabeth's generation particularly, help us bring a broader, more diverse voice to the state legislative discussions.
Let me ask this question of either of you, or both of you. How does Oklahoma stack up, relatively speaking, to other states? I know we're way down the list.
Horribly.
But we're 12%. What would be number one? I mean, what state would be near the top, if not at the top, if you recall?
I don't recall who's number one. I know Oklahoma is number 49, which is pretty sad and something that we're committed to changing.
49th in the number of women in elected office, but also 49th in public education funding, 48th in prenatal health care, 48th in the overall, 48th overall worst place for women to live based upon national studies. And of course, a lot of that is the economy of our state, but we think some of that can be changed as there is a more diverse dialogue. And of course, as you know, we're first in the nation in the incarceration of women. That's beginning to change with some great voices at the state legislature on all sides of the aisle. But we think those voices of women will help us change that even more rapidly.
Yeah, we've got an opportunity, do we not, in November to vote on a state question or on a House Joint Senate resolution that may assist in that regard insofar as the Pardon and Parole Board is concerned.
Absolutely.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That it would allow the governor to be removed from the review of nonviolent offenders. I mean, first of all, Governor Fallin has many, many important duties to do, and the Pardon and Parole Board in almost every other state makes the decisions on nonviolent offenders without the intervention of the governor. And so hopefully if that question passes, we'll be able to continue some of the work that the leadership of our state legislature has done in helping decrease the number of women that are incarcerated for nonviolent crimes and helping them re-enter the workforce and re-enter being leaders and mothers in their families.
Yeah, I guess the vast preponderance of women in prison in Oklahoma are in there for nonviolent crimes.
Absolutely.
And this would enable an alternative to be exercised to avoid that. Nonetheless, they would pay the price for what they did.
Absolutely.
They just wouldn't do it behind bars and at the expense of their children and families.
Which is a very costly way to deal with nonviolent offenders, especially when there's a family that remains.
Do either of you see any difference in Oklahoma between a woman in an urban area being willing to sign up and run versus a woman in a rural area?
From the candidates I've spoken to that attended the Women Count event, I don't think there was much of a difference. And most of the time, it was sort of like the old story of, you know, asking someone else to take out the trash, and after you ask them enough times and they won't do it, they just say, well, I guess I'm gonna have to take out the trash myself. And that was sort of what the women, they were so frustrated with what was going on. They said, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to go up to Oklahoma City and get those boys in line.
Is there a single issue that seems to drive them?
Education, I would say.
Many of them are teachers or former school teachers. All of them, I think almost all of them were mothers and very concerned with their children's and their grandchildren's future ability to get a quality public education in Oklahoma.
Well, we had two good examples of women in politics at the highest level when in the last gubernatorial race.
Absolutely.
Those were two pretty good examples to our citizenry of very effective women in politics. One got in and the other did not, but they were both very competent.
Right, and one of the few states in the country where there were two women running for governor. And as what I saw when I was mayor is I would have young girls come up to me in grade school and their mothers come up to me even now and say that because they saw a woman, I served as a role model for them, and they now would consider being in public service. And as you all both know, we have to encourage the best of the best to be serving our country at all levels.
What's the next step for Women Count?
Well, like Mom said, we turned this one event in just a couple months to 300 people and raised $70,000. Next week, Oklahoma City is actually having a similar event. And then we hope after these women are elected in November, we're going to issue action alerts and tell them what's going on at the Capitol, and then start the process all over again.
Are you organized with a web presence, or pretty much is it just communication?
We have a Facebook presence. We found that that was an easier way to link to the candidates so that they could keep informed on what was going on with their campaigns, and once they're elected, what's going on with their issues.
Is the organization involved at all in this campaign season? Are you organized for
we
certain
are,
issues?
We are really organized to help help women that are interested in issues that are really concerning this diverse group of women. So it's a very, it's not a PAC, it's just an organization of women that want to inspire others to get involved and to know that we have to have all of our voices heard at the state legislature.
Let's get to a break. Kathy Taylor, Elizabeth Frame Ellison. We're talking about women in politics on a lot of different levels, and we'll be right back.
The thing that has made the most sense for me is realizing that I'm still an educator, and that is what I do at the Chickasaw Nation. I'm Dr. Amanda Cobb-Greetham. I'm a historian, and I'm Chickasaw. The Chickasaw Cultural Center is amazing. It is a very, very special place devoted to the sharing and to the celebration of Chickasaw history and culture. State-of-the-art technology, exhibits that are not like anything I've ever seen. The Spirit Forest is incredible, and you feel as if you have actually just walked into a forest with huge trees all around you. It's timeless, and yet it's sort of also representative of our time depth, to really just sort of reach through time and touch the past. By the end of the exhibits, you really have a sense of Chickasaw cultural and political resurgence and the extent to which we are a healthy, dynamic, and vital tribe today. Chickasaws have always been an inclusive people. This is something for the whole community and for the state of Oklahoma.
They lift, grip, and bear pressure. They carry our state through every season. Hands that simply by doing their job, forge opportunity for nearly 350,000. These are the hands of Oklahoma's oil and natural gas industry, working sun up to sundown for our economy, our future, for every person who lives where these flags wave.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
Welcome back to the set of the verdict. We're discussing women in politics. Where do you want to go from here?
Well, I want to correct an error that I
You?
made. Yeah, you pointed it out to me on the break, but then Kathy was Secretary of Commerce, not Secretary of State, and I apologize for that. You would have been great as a Secretary of State.
Thank
as
you very
well.
much.
Is this Women Count organization, Elizabeth, something that you guys came up with, or is that a national organization and you're just going to be the Oklahoma chapter of it?
It really, I think no one else is doing this. There could be another organization, but we really just had a conversation together and said, we're frustrated. We wonder if other women are also frustrated, and sent out an email, and it turned into 50 people meeting for lunch and brainstorming how we were going to make this happen.
And who devised the name?
There were 40 women brainstorming the name, and I think we narrowed it down from there.
Well, what is the breakdown, if you know, of elected officials in Oklahoma by sex?
Well, in the state legislature, it is 12% of the state legislature.
So 1 in 8.
Right.
That's not very many.
No, not when 51% of the population is female.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and of that 51%, well, I should say of the total population in Oklahoma, more women vote than men, do they not?
That has been the case. Now, in 2010, nationally, we saw the first decline nationally in the number of women elected to office, and also a fairly substantial decline in the amount of money women gave to political candidates. Women control twice as many philanthropy dollars as men, but they only give about 26% of the political dollars. So the studies show that women didn't think their voice was being heard, or that it mattered. And so we really want to show them that it does matter. Every vote matters, right? We know this.
Sure, absolutely. I can give you examples of one vote mattering a lot. Well, give us an idea, if you would, of the conversation that took place when you gathered the largely group of women, but talking about women in politics, because there may be people in the audience who missed that conversation but might like to know a little more about the topics that were discussed.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we sent out an email and just said, we've been talking about this. We'd like to show these women running for office that they have support, and maybe some people can meet us for lunch. And we were expecting about 20 people, and we got twice that, so many we ran out of lunch, actually. And the women it was almost like they were waiting for something like this to come along, because they were passionate, especially after the last legislative session, about doing something about education, doing something about women's health issues, doing something about teen pregnancy. And they just said, tell us where to be. And we asked all of them, can you get 10 friends to commit to donating $92, $1 for every year women have had the right to vote at an event? And they all said, absolutely. And some of them invited, their entire address book, I think. So.
And then I think it was refreshing to everyone, because it wasn't about political labels. It wasn't about Democrat, Republican, or Independent. It's really about issues and a dialogue and a chance to meet the candidates and make your own decision in a small group setting as to whether or not you wanted to support that candidate. Everyone committed to write a check for $92, but only to the candidates that they chose to support. They didn't have to write it to any particular candidate. As it turns out, they were fairly evenly split, and as Elizabeth said, in about 2 hours, checks for about $70,000 were written by these 300 women.
But if someone says, yes, I want to run, what advice do you give? Okay, what's the next step?
The next step I would is find either an organization or a candidate that's willing to give you training. I attended a women's campaign school. There are nonpartisan groups that train women to run for office. The Barbara Lee Family Foundation has a great online presence teaching women how to run for office and different perceptions. So find someone that's done it, learn, and then learn how to ask for money.
We've seen in the last decade or so the number of women graduating from law school being roughly equivalent to the number of men. Sometimes it's greater, sometimes it's less, but it's just about a 50-50 split. That's enough time to see women have enough experience to progress onto the bench. And there I have seen in studies that the evaluation of women judges versus men judges routinely rate the women judges higher as in being more effective than their male counterparts. What about that leads you to believe that a woman can be a good legislator?
Well, I've seen it at the state legislature, and again, it's from both Republicans and Democrats. Women approach problem solving in a more collaborative way. Often that's because they're the arbiter of family disputes, I think. And when Sue Tibbs would come into a room, or Jeannie McDaniel, or Penny Williams, the dialogue would change. And I think sometimes it would be perhaps elevated and maybe more respectful. So I think women have a different approach, not better or worse, but a different approach to problem solving, and it makes for a better solution, I think, when all those voices are at the table. What's your take on that? You're a lawyer as well. What's your take on that?
I think that's completely true, and just always having more perspectives in whether it's in the classroom or on the bench or at the legislature. It can never be harmful to have more perspectives.
At the end of the show, we're going to give the Facebook information so people can check it out and learn more. But what type of conversation will they see on the Facebook page when people go there?
Well, we tweet and we Facebook and we talk about what the candidates are doing, whether it's events or debates or things like that. And then if they come out with an opinion on an issue or have something they'd like to share, we'll share that information, and then just general information about when we have these meetings, which we'll have our second one next week. So.
Well, you're not concentrating just on legislative offices in the Tulsa area, I take it.
No, it's all across the state, from Ponca City to Tulsa to Oklahoma City, all across the state. And will you take a look at perhaps expanding beyond the legislative races and into statewide races? You know, I think at this point, the group that met was very excited about making a focused progress in the state legislature. I think we need to move our state's rankings up in that, and we'll see how that goes this year and reevaluate after this election.
Well, that might follow, naturally.
Are there issues currently on the legislative agenda that you guys are following?
Certainly public education funding. I think that would be the highest one. And what about the funding? I mean, obviously they're squeezing back on just about everything. Right, but third highest cuts in the nation in public education funding in Oklahoma. And, you know, as Secretary of Commerce, I saw that if you don't have an educated workforce, you can never attract good companies or retain them. And I know you've seen, as I did, if you don't have an educated workforce, your crime rate increases. Right. So to me, the building block, and to these women that were running, the building block for a robust economy and a low crime rate was making sure kids were graduated from high school, college, and career ready. And that does require, as I interviewed Teachers of the Year a few weeks ago, and I saw kindergarten teachers with 28 kids and no teacher's aide. That's not a good way to fund public education. Our time has gone quickly. I hope you both will come back when we have more success in this area, and we can come back and talk about perhaps some of the candidates that are coming forward. Kathy Taylor and Elizabeth Frame Ellison talking about women in politics. They're on the front lines, and we'll give that Facebook information when we return with a final word from Kent and me right after this.
Good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
You have children coming from a different lifestyle, different mindset. You have to open your arms and really do what you have to do to have that child become a part of your family. And if it's more patience, that's what you do. Kids gotta know they can trust you. And that's what we've tried to do with these kids.
You will always be Mom and Dad.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of the verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of the verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers wrapping up the show. We learned more about women in politics and efforts in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City to get more women involved in elective politics, especially at the state legislature. And Elizabeth Frame Ellison and her mother, Kathy Taylor, are very involved in this.
Well, indeed they are, and I have no doubt, being a former law partner of Kathy Taylor's and seeing her work in the legal area as well as in the mayor of Tulsa and other endeavors, how effective she is and how she will get things done, I promise you, and it'll be done in a quality fashion. I'm sure her daughter, Elizabeth, will emulate her, and this is going to be an organization that I predict will succeed, and we'll hear a lot more about it.
I suspect this Facebook page they've got together is going to have some legs, so let me get that address on the screen. Facebook.com/Women Count OK is where you can go to get more information on where these meetings are being held or how you can be a part of the process or at least the conversation about dealing with women's issues and also the issue of getting more women into elective office. I also want to give our website. You can go to this website and talk to us about a show or a topic you'd like to see discussed on a future edition of The Verdict. That website is theverdict.tv. That is theverdict.tv. And next week we have Glenn Lytle on.
Dr. Glenn Lytle with the Oklahoma Foundation for Quality Medical Care is going to come on and talk to us about his organization and what strides they are making to improve the quality of medical care in Oklahoma.
It's all coming up next week. I hope you'll join us right then on The Verdict. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week with another show.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.